Hi, this is LKN back again with a new podcast. In this podcast, I'll be covering certain aspects of my professional experience. Along with this, I'll also be covering the differences the values can bring into our lives and also for the bigger good of the humanity. I did finish the first book based on industrial revolution, and I covered most of the aspects of industry 4.0 in my first book, the Odyssey of Industrial Revolution, the Dawn. In the second book, I'll be covering most of the parts or the developments that are taking place for Industry 5.0. And I have been researching on it, so it's still in progress, not yet completed. During my research, I did found a couple of aspects which I would love to share in this podcast. Well, that's the outline of this podcast. Stay tuned. Thank you. To give a little bit more detailed outline about this podcast, I will be talking about a short story from my past with a learning, the current leadership aspects, couple of wrong innovations in the recent past, and at the end I would be concluding the thought process I'm having and also would highlight the kind of direction where we are headed with the current developments. So here is a short story with a learning. A decade back, as you all know, I was part of the IT service desk, more of a help desk. The basic troubleshooting, resolving end user issues, managing the technical aspects. As days passed, I had more time in hand, which I used to dedicate to share motivational posts on Facebook. Well, the number of posts increased as the job I had in hand became a child's play, basically. It's a routine, right? So you get to know most of the resolutions. Uh, Pretty much you would be able to understand what the problem is in the very first minute of the call. And so my AHT wasn't more than 4 minutes those days. Now I was most luckiest as I was indirectly reporting to few US Army veterans who had transitioned to IT roles. They observed my activities. One day, one of the leaders pulled me on a call and was trying his best to communicate in the language I understood. He just quoted a phrase, the phrase was, just because you can do doesn't mean you have to. It did have a lot of meaning, but still, I was pretty much in the beginning of my career and not that serious on what he was trying to conclude. But maybe what do you say, the subconscious mind did understood and understood the intent. And yes, I became a bit serious and sort of got inclined to make my career a bit progressive, concentrating on what I need to learn and dedicating my time to more useful things. All said and done, that phrase, I'm re-quoting the phrase, just because you can do doesn't mean you have to. It has a lot of meaning. And there is a need for us to revisit this and understand what we are doing, why we are doing, and is this useful, and in what way it is useful, and what about the future implications of whatever we are doing. That said and done, I would park this discussion for some time and I would get back to this phrase during the conclusion phase. Okay, well, thank you. That's the first topic. Okay, now on to the next topic, the current leadership aspects. You call me old school or whatever. My upbringing has always given me a bigger picture for the term leadership. Well, in India, those days, I mean, during my childhood days, we had a few television serials which we used to watch, and most of them were based on our history, right? The kings that ruled, or the mythology. Well, the leadership, I was introduced to this term by seeing those Rajagurus, right? The kind of people, the senior people who kind of help the king with the direction, with the right direction, the ideal direction they should take to win. They are kind of advisors, right? So that is where I was introduced to the term leader and the values of leadership. Well, the virtue of leading is more complicated. It's self-sacrificing, and also fighting for the bigger good of the humanity is what I have imagined so far. And the well-known example is the advisor Chanakya, right? There's many books also written on the way we should manage based on his concepts. So, I want to see a leader whom we can imagine to be perfect in all senses. Well, back to the real world, away from the fantasies. What has happened to the current leadership? I mean, money, greed, power, and favors for business. I mean, I agree, money is an important aspect we all need. However, there's a bigger good expected from the leaders driving it, right? I mean, as of now, if you look at any organization, the amount of innovations or their activities or the business goals doesn't directly link to the bigger good of humanity. Have you observed that? Is there a thought process of which you have internally gone through, understanding where we are headed if we have the same leadership? Right? I mean, there are loads of books written and loads of quotes and other materials, and also podcasts being circulated. Maybe of use, maybe of not much use. But whatever it is, have you ever thought, like, is this leadership gonna be useful for us as we proceed ahead with the AI or the other innovations which is coming up? I mean, it's a fast-paced innovation as well as growth-paced environment, right? I mean, fast-paced growth is already there. So, if at all these leaders whom we have now, the business leaders, right? I mean, we all know the businesses are the one which is leading the future of humanity on the whole, right? There might be countries and country-specific governments, but the major developments, what is happening is because of the corporate companies, right? I mean, the I mean, I wouldn't want to quote Ellen now, but still, Ellen is the guy who has made a major difference, right? I mean, if you look at his business, I mean, he is one of the richest as of now. That's altogether a different thing. But if you analyze the kind of direction where he is going through, he has limited whatever products is about to launch or has already launched or is being innovating as of now, is kind of inclined or directed with a purpose to facilitate the growth of humans. That's an outline what I kind of see there. But do we see that in other corporate organizations? I mean, do we see that even in the political environments? Is there or are there any leaders who are striving for the bigger good of the humanity? I mean, that's a bigger thing, right? I mean, there's always a bigger cause, right? So, what are we as a leader what is our contribution to the future? I mean, if I go back and say that I want to increase my revenue by 50%, 100%, maybe good. I mean, it is needed. But going back to the term value, right? There is a need for us to have certain values which are directly connected to the growth of humans, for the betterment of humans, in a way that has to be included part of every organization's value structure. I mean, these are days where we are seeing even a basic framework like Agile or even ITIL has a separate section for values. So, how seriously are we taking this value part of the organizational intent, right? I mean, there is a need for us to channelize our innovations. There is a need for us to channelize our growth. As long as the direction is only towards money or power, or maybe the expansion, it's not gonna help us on a longer run, right? Why I say this? Well, I will cover it part of the next topic, which is dedicated for the couple of wrong innovations that has gone haywire, impacting and may impact in future as well. It's already impacted to an extent. I would cover that in the next topic. Thank you. So we are at the third topic. Well, that's innovations, the wrong innovations, right? Well, before we talk about the wrong innovations and I share my findings, well, just a couple of things. Well, these innovations are certainly some things which are supposed to be controlled and directed. And this control and direction, right? This always lies with the leaders, right? And the current world is more ruled and directed by the leaders in the corporate, right? It's the corporate mostly which is leading the innovations to a greater extent, right? Well, we see one of the most important innovation, wrong innovation, which has impacted the entire world, right? The pandemic, the coronavirus, the COVID-19, right? It's actually a wrong innovation, wrongly directed, which was not needed. Well, not directed in the right way. The use was also not something which was welcome or welcomed, right? It's not the right use of the technology or our resources, whatever it is, right? This is one innovation which has impacted the entire world and humanity. The maybe indirectly it has directed certain innovations and different way of working, but there are so many lives which were lost, right? Many families which has been impacted because of this, right? In a negative way, not in a positive way. The impact of coronavirus is widely negative to a greater extent. So this is kind of a, I mean, I'm not blaming any country or any leader here. I'm not sure who was the reason or who was behind all this. But this certainly is a kind of a example for the bad leadership, what I was talking about, right? Well, the direction as the innovation comes from direction, and the direction should be based on an intent that is more of dependent on values, right? If we get the values correct, everything will fall in place. But where are these values We'll come to this discussion at a later point of time. Let me cover the next wrong innovation or the research which went successful last week, very recently. It's not been more than 7 days yet. It was published in one of the research journals based on AI. Well, so we are doing AI reproduction, self dependent AI which can reproduce on its own and grow. Right now, is this innovation needed? Is this research needed? Is it gonna be of any help for us? Right? I mean, this is I don't see the intent and the direction connected with values here, right? So I mean, we may need lots of disruptions, I agree, but something which is more use for humanity, right? And which is more helpful for humans to thrive and not to get extinct. These are two really good examples of wrong innovation. One is the coronavirus, and the second one, which recently happened. Now, these are only a few examples. There are a lot more going on, lot more which are not published, lot more which is happening on the back end, a lot more to which we don't have access as a normal human being, right? With that, I conclude this topic of wrong innovations. Let's proceed ahead to the conclusion part, where I would conclude all these aspects and kind of explain my thought process. Thank you. So we started with the phrase, just because we can do doesn't mean we have to, right? And the second one was about the leadership. The third one was the wrong innovations. Well, let me tell you, I've been writing my second book, as I discussed earlier, the Industrial Revolution, the Odyssey of Industrial Revolution. The Dusk is the second book which I'm working on as of now. There's a long way to go. I thought I will publish it by Christmas, but I don't think I would be able to do that because the research involved is too much, and I'm getting access to a couple of research journals and kind of still working on it. But initially, when I look at the developments and as I research more, I see that the leadership as well as the innovations are going to be two important aspects which would make Industry 5.0 a reality, right? It will make it fructify. It will make Industry 5.0 fructify. So the leadership as well as the innovations are supposed to be in the right direction, and both are very much linked, right? Now, when I say leadership, we all know that the entire world is driven by corporate leaders to a greater extent, right? The innovations are funded by these organizations who have leaders, right? And now these leaders are the ones who will kind of direct the innovations in the right way. Now, if this direction is not something which is based on the better good of humanity, right? Do you think we would be headed in the right direction? Now, the next question is, from where does this right direction come from? Well, the right direction is supposed to be directly linked with the values that support the humanity, right? How many organizations do you see which has a value driven by them which is directly connected to the better or in a way to the humanity, right? Directly to the humanity, for the better good of the humanity. I don't see much organizations which is more of value driven, right? They're revenue driven for sure, power driven for sure, expansion driven for sure, but what about the values? Now, why do I question this, right? I am a big fan of Ellen. Maybe I'm not that. I don't know if I have the right to talk about him, or I have the. Uh, I am an apt person to talk about it. But as a normal human, right? As a normal human being, a layman, I see that Helen's companies, whatever he has started so far, is directly connected with being useful for humans, right? There is an aspect of being helpful for the entire humanity, be it the SpaceX, or be it the PayPal, which was initially, right? It made lots of things easier for humans, or be it Neuralinks, right? Or be it Tesla, right? There is an aspect where they are trying to be useful in a disruptive way for sure, but for humans, right? Their innovations have a direction which is channelized where humans can thrive and be better, right? I mean, those the values connected with these organizations which Ellen is starting has a lot of meat in it, right? It is, I mean, maybe for a layman as me, the goals might seem unrealistic. I'm not saying Ellen is not inclined to power, money, greed, or expansion. It is there. It's a human nature. It will always be there. But there is a bigger aspect connected with his companies where he is trying to be helpful for humans, right? There is a humanity aspect associated with all the products that he is trying to launch, or he is trying to be useful for a set of humans or the entire humanity altogether, right? So, don't you think the leaders, I mean, even if I mean, let's be frank, right? What is the best of the best quarterly meeting you attend, right? Has there a topic, or has there a slot decided where we discuss on how we can be used for a set of humans, right? I mean, there are products, right? But these disruptions, innovations has to be channelized. So is there a kind of a slot allocated where we discuss on how we should channelize these innovations in a way where we will be disruptive for sure, but for the use of humans or to serve humans, right? I don't think that's happening anywhere. Most of these quarterly discussions would be like, okay, we did a percentage increase in revenue, right? That's the pretty much the crux of the quarterly meetings, where we are headed in terms of revenue, where we are headed in terms of power, where we are headed of uh, where we are headed in terms of expansion. Right? These are the core topics which most of the leadership meetings will have. Don't you think it's time we have slots where we discuss how our organization can be of use for the humanity? I mean, there are charities happening. I don't deny that. I mean, there might be other reasons, but still, it is happening for sure, right? But that's not the core of the business. That's the problem. I mean, these disruptions, innovations, if it is channelized for the betterment of the humanity, there are more chances that our products sell more and we earn more, our revenue increases more, right? Our expansion also is successful, and we tend to get powerful also as we proceed if these values are incorporated, right? Now, the question is, do we have the right leaders who follow these values? Do we have any leaders who are actually channelizing these disruptions or innovations in a way? These bad or say wrong innovations are just a couple of examples which is brought to our notice, right? There is a lot more happening, which are the intentions are evil. I mean, it might be for power hungry, or the greed of money, or the greed for expansion. I mean, it's not linked with the value, right? Now, I would like to quote Ellen again. I did, I keep just binge watching a couple of interviews of Ellen. So, what I found out was Ellen quoted a kind of a research which was made where he stated that the research concluded that the entire humanity can be put under one roof in New York City, right? That's how insignificant we are in numbers compared to the nature, right? There is a need for us to support each other, right? Our extinction will not be a bigger event compared to the entire nature what we have in this world, and very minute when we talk in terms of the universe or the galaxies what we have, right? So the event of our extinction is so easy, and it wouldn't have any major impact on nature, or there is I mean, nature wouldn't be worried if humans go extinct. We are that minute, insignificant. Maybe we have our families for whom we are the world, right? But for the entire humanity, there is no one who will sit and cry in agony, right? So Ellen did quote that we are so insignificant and less in numbers. This was with respect to the innovations in AI, right? These innovations in AI, which would be the core part of Industry 5.0, there is a need for us to channelize this. There is a need for us to ensure that AI innovations are within context, within control, and is well directed. Well, there is a need for the AI innovations to have the core as AI should be useful for the entire humanity, right? And if AI innovations go haywire, right? Can you believe what might happen? Well, I would again like to quote Ellen here. Ellen simplified to a greater extent by stating that if at all gets AI innovations go haywire, then we would be like merry pets for the AIs. And instead of AI being useful for humans, the innovations or the wrong innovations would be a cause for human extinct for sure. On a longer run, it might eventually happen. AI, I mean, you can't stop AI unless and until you keep it groomed in a way where it understands and respects that humans have to be alive along with them, right? Uh, that all said and done, these innovations, what I'm trying to say is innovations and leaderships go hand in hand, and there is a need to control the innovations with having values right to the core of the corporate culture. Now, few wrong leaders are suffice to make things worse for the entire generation of humans. That's pretty much possible. And even if these innovations kind of segregates with a set of people, a fraternity, or a specific region, there is going to be a complex future for us ahead, with all the innovations and technologies which is going on in a fast paced environment. Well, I am kind of alarmed with the way, the possibilities of how evil things can go, right? With that, I am at the conclusion part. I almost concluded. Well, basically, the leadership, the direction, the values, right, matters a lot. Well, basically, the leadership and the innovations are the two traits, way of humans, which is gonna uh, make Industry 5.0 a reality. All said and done, I, being a big supporter of mental health, I am quite happy with the way Neuralinks is moving ahead, and I do look forward for a lot of research and successful initiatives by Neuralink to make humans' brain function more better, and also kind of help assist the people who are suffering with mental health or mental ailments, right? It's kind of a hope for them, what Neuralink is giving, right? A small chip can make wonders for us, and also, who knows, we may be able to compete with AI using these chips, right? Possible, very much possible. With that, I end this with a positive note. I look forward for Neuralink to be a success to a greater extent, and I wish there will be superhumans, and of course with values and better direction. With that, I conclude this podcast. Thank you. Happy weekend. Bye bye.